Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled are conductor Mikael Avetisyan and author Ann Mah. And Ann will discuss her novel, Chinese Kitchen. Principal conductor and artistic director of the Glendale Philharmonic, Mikael Avetisyan studied at Yerevan State Conservatory, where he earned a master's in opera and symphony conducting, along with ethnomusicology, and he completed his doctorate there as well. He's worked under maestros Yasha Voskanian,
right. Yeah.
Yasha Voskanian, Ohan Durian, and since the early 90s, Mikael has conducted in Armenia for opera, ballet, and symphony. Then he extended his work to include concerts in Greece and France and Georgia and the Netherlands. Does music run in your family?
Yes. I didn't have choice to look for the other profession because my father was composer, and he thought that from a young age I have the talent, and they took me to the music school. From 6 years old, I studied music.
Well, what if you didn't have the talent? Do you think it could have been developed by going that early? I just wonder about that.
I can say that I had. I love music since I don't remember, but I think my parents should decide in 2-3 years when I just started learning music. But I think they thought that I have this.
They
Maybe.
could see it. Were there other people in your family?
My mom, she's dancer. She was dancing. Now she's teaching.
Oh, she was dancing.
Yeah,
Is she in a folklorico or ballet or?
She was a solo dancer in a Armenian state folk song and dance ensemble.
Ah.
It was in a time with a very famous ensemble. Then after having child, so me and my brother, so she stopped dancing and she was teaching in a dance academy in Yerevan.
I see. And then your brother, did your brother go into music? Or
No, no, he's a diplomat.
Oh, he's a diplomat, which is good. But he can make way for you in all these other places. Your father was composing for what kind of music?
General, mostly his songs are very popular in Armenia. Songs that have been written in 1960s, 70s. Still, they are all the artists in Armenia now. They are singing. Also, Armenian diaspora in all the world.
Is that right?
Yeah, Khachatur Avetisyan, his name, and
Khachaturian?
Khachatur Avetisyan.
Oh, Khachatur.
Yeah, name Khachatur Avetisyan, and mostly popular with his songs.
Was he during the time of Khachaturian? There's a school there in Armenia, right?
Yes,
Khachaturian
yes.
or archives.
Aram Khachaturyan,
Yeah.
our the composer. Once I met him when I was 5 years old.
Oh, you
When
did?
he came to Armenia from Moscow. I was living in Moscow, and I remember him at that time. So I didn't have this. I couldn't imagine that once. I'll start to conduct his works, the opera, the ballet, especially his Spartacus ballet and Guyana ballet and symphony and concertos.
Fantastic music.
Yes.
And tell me,
dance.
and tell me, did you conduct right in the opera house, the Philharmonic Hall in Armenia?
Right after my graduation, I started working in State Opera, conducting and ballets and operas. I had a chance to conduct for many seasons, many performances, Guyana ballet, Khachaturians.
And was it different all the time, the Guyane Ballet, depending on who was directing it, or did you have the control?
Of course, I have the control, but with the ballet, it's a little bit different than with the symphony orchestra, just performing the music. Because there is a ballet, and you always have to look for the dancers to keep the tempo.
That's what I wondered, what the difference is in that. Well, isn't that the same thing that happens in opera?
Exactly, like you have a soloist there. Soloist or choir, it's a group, corps de ballet. And the same way, before the performance, I go to the dance class with my score.
I see.
Yeah, I put some marks about tempo, about. They are asking me to keep here a little bit the ritardato, like to slower here, or I'm asking them to keep more pausa because there is a fermata. I have to keep this chord longer for the music.
You tell them to wait longer?
Yes.
Because you have the orchestra. That's what I wondered how that worked. So you work it out with the principals before,
Yes.
and you rehearse
Yes.
with them in those situations.
Almost the same way with the opera, like with the singers. But mostly, there's a small difference. With the singers, I can ask them to sing faster or slower because this is my interpretation with the opera.
You can do that.
Yes, yes. But with the ballet, there's a physical limitation that the choreographer he did that way, and the dancer, the maximum that he can do this fast is this limitation.
Because it only comes with this music?
Yes, the physical.
I see. That's the thing. And you talked about your score. You brought a score for us today.
I just took one from my library.
And it's obviously all in Russian.
Oh, yes.
Right? And
I
what is
brought
it?
with me. This is Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, Le Sacre de Printemps, symphony picture. This is the score.
Have you conducted this?
Oh, yes, with the symphony orchestra.
And so if you open it up, you'll see pieces that how you've marked the score.
Oh, yes, yes. It takes a long time to prepare a symphony or any music before you appear to the orchestra. And I think, my principle, you have to know this by mind, everything.
So
all the notes,
do you need
all
this?
the parts.
If you're conducting and you've memorized the score, do you need it in front of you, or can you?
At the
or
performance,
is it a crutch?
no, not at the performance, but when at the rehearsal time, I need it because I stop and then I have to look at the. Let's start from this measure.
Oh, that's when you during rehearsal.
During rehearsal only.
I see. When you've started this orchestra, is this it? Are you one of the founders of the Glendale Philharmonic? Tell us a little bit about that, because it's difficult to start an orchestra in any city. Any city.
Right. It's amazing, but we did it. I think for anything to create a little bit, like you have to be crazy.
Yeah, what was the motivation?
Go through that.
How did you get motivated to do that?
And the excitement, because when we met with the Ruslan Birukov, brilliant cellist and musician, and I had the same thought and he had the same project. Ideas, right. So, and we did it.
But
we had a first concert.
Okay, how'd you choose the members?
Oh, that's it's very interesting, because at this time, any musician, of course they're musicians, they love music, they play, but they would come with pleasure to the new orchestra as a member, but we need them as a thirsty musician, because probably
hungry, you mean?
Yes. Yes, probably I'll keep a little bit longer at the rehearsal time, and I want them to agree. I want them to go for the music until we finish the work. It's not that I have my time.
I'm watching. You mean just as a member, just as a work?
Yes.
You want someone to be inspired and passionate. Well, how do you find those people? Are they young? Are they old?
I thought it will be difficult, but thanks to Ruslan and many friends that I have, they are very, very excited. Everyone.
And how old is it now?
The orchestra is a few months.
Just
we had
a
a
few months.
first inaugural concert in January.
And so, how do you pick the programs?
I have to say that first program was a little bit difficult for the orchestra, but we did brilliant because I chose this especially for violins, difficult pieces, to show that quality.
But you did it on purpose? Wouldn't it have been easier to do easier pieces?
No.
No, it's not.
No, they are beautiful pieces that we did. Bach Prelude from from Partita. We did Carl Jenkins Palladio.
Oh,
very famous piece, and we did Armenian composers Edvard Mirzoyan's Symphony. All those pieces are virtuoso region for the violins, and our orchestra did 100%.
When you conduct, do you stand or do you sit?
Oh, I stand.
And do you stand with something around you?
Not necessarily. Maybe with the age I lost to put this.
And then what do you use as a conductor? I think you brought us some
Yes.
batons, which I think are great.
Here they are.
So this baton has a little
It's a handle, small handle.
small handle.
They are different.
And this?
Yeah.
Are they this? They're
They
all
are batons
different
long.
sizes. How do you decide?
Oh, it's a matter of.
Oh, look at this, and
the
this is
feeling.
wood.
It's a little heavier, yeah.
And longer, bigger. Is the heaviness of the piece? Does it depend on what you're using?
No, the reason is to make the hand longer. That's
Yeah.
it. And which I choose. It depends of music, depends of program. There is music that symphony that I don't want any. I have 10.
Oh, so you use your hands.
Yes.
But with the opera, do you use your hands?
Not necessarily. It's very individual. Like conductors, they are conductors not using baton. I remember, not me, but I find in a book that there is a Russian conductor in 19th century, Napravnik. He was conducting with the white gloves.
You're kidding.
Yeah. It's a dark at the opera house when going to performance.
That's fantastic, though.
Yes. And this is very individual, bigger, longer, or the heavy one. But there are pieces that I really want to have nothing because
This makes me feel very strong and really fantastic. I love the feel of it. So it has this little handle.
Yes, that's
just for you.
Not to.
Oh, I think it's fantastic, and I'm so happy you came to talk about it. And the Glendale Philharmonic, with you at the head of it, is going to be fantastic. Where do you play?
In the Glendale, beautiful church, First Baptist Church in Glendale.
And I understand it has really great acoustics.
Acoustic, exactly.
How does that happen? Usually in the churches, the acoustics aren't so great.
That's an old church, and recently it has been renovated.
You renovated?
Yes, and has a great acoustic and very. It's inspiring when we are at the hall. Yes.
How many people in the orchestra so far?
In the orchestra now, for the first program, we had 20 musicians. For the next program, we'll have more, 25, 30. But with the time, we're going to grow up to the Stravinsky size.
That's Stravinsky size, which takes how many, 100?
110 musicians.
110. Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing that with us.
My pleasure.
And don't go away. We'll be right back with author Ann Mah. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. I'm here with Ann Mah, who was born and raised in Orange County, California. She's lived in Beijing, New York, and now she's living in Paris. In 2005, she won a James Beard Scholarship to study in Bologna. And the only thing I can say about Italy and Chinese are noodles.
Well, of course, and Marco Polo.
So tell me, how do they compare, the noodles?
Oh, the noodles. Well, I think both in China and in Italy, there's a long history and tradition of noodle making, with the secret recipes or the techniques guarded jealously by old women, essentially.
By each side. But there is that pasta element to both sides, isn't there?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And you talk about it a lot. I mean, here you were, you studied in Bologna, so you knew about noodles, I guess, or pasta. And then you lived in Beijing, so you knew about that. And I think one of the great things, I loved your book.
Thank you.
I loved Chinese, the whole Chinese atmosphere, but that it was so contemporary and so American also. So Kitchen Chinese tells us about Mao Er-du. What is that? Well, we were talking about noodles, so that's a noodle, right?
It is a type of noodle that's eaten in the north, in Shanxi province. Actually, it's pronounced Mao Er-do.
Mao Er-do?
And that actually translates literally to cat's ears. And so it's a little noodle that's shaped like a little pointed ear. It's a small pasta, and they eat them with cabbage, stir-fried cabbage, or stir-fried tomatoes. It's a very common.
But it sounds like the Italian orecchiette, which is also an ear, right?
Exactly. It's extremely similar.
Is it?
Formed by hand, yeah.
Do they taste the same? Do they make the noodles the same?
Well, I think that in Italy they use a lot of egg in their pasta, and in China there is not so much of an egg base. But other than that, pasta is pasta, flour and water, you boil it, yeah.
So you're a journalist. You started your career as a journalist. How did that lead into this novel, Kitchen Chinese?
Well, I was working in Beijing at an expat magazine as a restaurant reviewer.
You actually were?
I actually was, as does my main character in the book.
Yes, I think this is very autobiographical.
It was inspired by my experiences living in Beijing for 4 years.
And why did you go there?
I moved with my husband. He works for the State Department. He's a diplomat. And so a month after we got married, we moved to China. And, when I was there, I experienced this intense culture shock.
Are you Chinese?
I'm ethnically Chinese. I was born in the States and grew up in the States, and so I feel very culturally American. My identity is very American.
Right.
And so to be in China, where I was immediately considered Chinese and not accepted as an American at all, was very challenging for me. And those experiences really formed the heart of the book.
Were you taking notes while you were there?
I think I'm always taking notes, no matter what I'm doing.
If you're going to use it or not, right? Right. As a food editor, was it essential for you to know how to cook?
No.
It's like a fashion editor. You don't have to be able to make clothes, but you have to make that interesting to people.
Exactly. And it was a wonderful way to explore the different regional cuisines of China, which China is such a big country, and each region has a flavor and a dish that is totally unique to it.
But how did you have time to travel all through China, a big country?
China is a huge country, and I really wish I had done more traveling than I was able to do. But the regions I did visit, I really enjoyed, and it was very enriching.
Did you travel without your husband or with your husband?
I did both. We traveled together, and I traveled alone. I visited Shanghai, which is the city where my mother was born, and she left in 1949. Just before the communists came. I found the house that she grew up in, and that was a very moving experience that inspired a scene in the book.
Your story is told with so many metaphors about life in the kitchen, about life in general. How did you stir up those metaphors and think about all that?
Well, I think food plays a big role in discovering a new country for me, whether it's China or, other countries in Southeast Asia or Europe. I live in Paris right now. Connecting through a place through the food is how I begin to understand the local people.
So is your character going to be living in Paris and talking about Parisian metaphors?
Well, I would love to write a book set in Paris. I don't think it'll be with the same character, but I would love to.
Oh, it won't.
No, I think the character in Kitchen Chinese, I think her story has been told, and that story, I think, is, you know, has seen its course. But I would like to write something about a young woman living in Paris. Absolutely.
Well, tell us about your main character in Kitchen Chinese. Tell us what she did, how she ran her course.
Well, the character's name is Isabel. She's a young Chinese American woman who has a career catastrophe happen to her in New York. She picks up and moves to Beijing, where she has a sister living, and she tries to find her feet there in a new place, in a new language, a totally new city.
Could she speak the language? No.
Well, she speaks Kitchen Chinese, which is the name of the book.
That's what I was going to ask you. What does the name actually mean? There's a double play on it, right?
Kitchen Chinese refers to the Chinese one speaks when we're the child of immigrants. So it's the Chinese of the home. You can discuss what you're having for dinner, or maybe explain to mom and dad why your grades aren't so good. But you can't talk about politics or philosophy or anything that an educated person could really talk about.
Because you don't have the ability
vocabulary.
or the vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
So she finds a life there.
She does. She makes a life for herself, and I think that her life starts to get easier once she finds this job at the expat magazine, and once she starts meeting more local friends and expat friends alike, and once she starts eating more.
Well, your character goes out to dinner a lot. Did you find the recipes at the restaurants? Because you give recipes in the book, which is fabulous the way you do it.
I give a few recipes in the book, but they're mostly the Chinese food that I make, which is kind of a Americanized fusion type of food.
I mean, they're not really recipes per se, but you'll talk about the ingredients.
Yes,
say.
and the different regional cuisines. Each chapter is named after a different region of China. And yes, that was one of my most treasured experiences living in China, was eating at all these different restaurants that each served a different type of cuisine that was very, very varied.
Well, how did you know what was in them? Did you ask the chefs or the waiters, or how do you know that?
Well, that's a really good question. It's hard to go into a Chinese restaurant and know what to order in China, because a lot of the food has poetic names. For example, there's a dish called Earth's Three Fairies, which is, that's a very romantic name. It sounds like it should be out of Hansel and Gretel or something, but it's actually just potato, eggplant, and bell pepper stir-fried together.
Earth's
Three Fairies.
Which is
potato, eggplant, and bell pepper.
And then bell pepper. Mm-hmm. Those are the fairies.
Mm-hmm. And supposedly when you stir fry them together with a special sauce, it develops a magical flavor.
Oh, I see. Well, what kind of sauce do they put on it then? That's the secret?
I guess that's the secret. It just seems sort of a combination of soy sauce, maybe some ginger and garlic. I'm not sure.
That's it? And then just stir fry. Mm-hmm. The other thing that you use a lot is Chinese proverbs at the beginning of many of your chapters. And something like "to eat well is to live well" is one that I remember. Mm-hmm. Of course, that's really what this is about. To eat well is to live well.
Exactly, and I think that to eat well is also to discover a new place, to have an open heart and not be afraid to try different things, or to be intimidated by new dishes or things that seem unusual.
Well, the other thing that I think is, like, you brought food into everything, even into your sex scenes. I mean, you gave a kiss and it tasted like mint with vanilla. Mm-hmm. I mean, how is your imagination working in these situations?
Well, I don't know. I think that with the romantic scenes, that was a way for me to really explore the main character's cultural identity. I mean, I am asked a lot why I decided to write a novel versus a memoir.
Exactly.
And I think that, well, first of all, I think that for a memoir, if you're in your 20s or 30s, it's hard to write a memoir if you don't have a large breadth of experience behind you.
It's a little presumptuous, isn't it?
It can be, yes. And I think also that for the novel, I wanted to write fiction because it allowed me to explore different avenues, like the romantic relationships.
Well, the romantic, but also the sibling rivalry.
Yes.
Do you have a sister?
I do not have a sister.
But that was an interesting interplay.
Yes. And I wanted to create someone for the main character to act as her foil.
That's with the rivalry.
Yes, there's the rivalry between them, but then there's also the sister who is almost perfect, except she has these very dark secrets. And she feels very comfortable in China. She speaks very good Chinese, and she has really adapted.
So she was the perfect one.
Exactly, and she really acts as the foil to the main character, who feels very awkward in China and is really struggling to make her way in the world.
Well, one thing is, you are a chef, and you do know how to cook, and you brought us something today, which is in the book. Tell me a little bit about it.
This is a shrimp salad with salt and pepper shrimp over a bed of arugula. This is actually something that I have created. I've adapted a recipe my father used to make when I was a kid. He would make these stir-fried shrimp with salt and pepper. They're very savory. And we would eat them for special meals.
Just regular shrimp?
Yep, just regular shrimp, salt, sugar, and pepper, a little garlic, a little white wine or dry sherry, stir-fried together. And then, so we would eat those just plain for special occasions, as part of a larger meal. I like to serve this over a bed of salad as a first course.
Well, I'm glad you brought that, but also you talked about when your mother came to visit, or I don't know if your mother came to visit you, but the character, Isabel's mother, came to visit her, and you talked about this traditional Thanksgiving dinner. How did that fit into the plot of things?
Well, no matter where I'm living, whether it be in China or Europe or even in the United States, Thanksgiving is one of my favorite holidays. And I think in the book that scene really shows the tension between the family, a big holiday meal, and the expectations that everyone brings to the table.
But it was like so American in the middle of China.
And that's really an experience that I think most expats could relate to.
Did it happen?
I've celebrated many Thanksgivings overseas, absolutely.
I remember when we were in Jordan, we had Thanksgiving dinner at the American Colony Hotel, and it was like so exciting to have your own turkey, but then there was mezza all around as well.
Exactly, and
just what you were saying.
Yeah, I really love that mix of foods.
Well, Ann Mah, thank you for coming. Thank you for bringing your shrimp and your kitchen Chinese book. I've loved reading it. It was fast reading and it was exciting for me.
Thank you so much for having me.
And keep writing. 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, Los Angeles 90017. And email to JAQUINN and the numeral 1 at AOL.com. Bye.